The annual Autumn Festival in Harbor Cove always resonated with lively sounds and vibrant colors of celebration. Yet in Emma Dawson's eyes, the joyful scene only amplified her feeling of solitude and insignificance. The air around her was rich with laughter, cheerful music, and the sweet aroma of freshly baked apple pies. Everything seemed to revel in the warm golden sunlight. Everything except the quiet, hurting heart tucked away deep inside Emma. She stood silently on the outskirts of the crowded town hall, her small hands gripping tightly onto a glass jar filled with coins she'd carefully saved over the past months. Soft brown hair fell forward, shadowing the sadness in her ocean blue eyes. It had been almost a full year since Emma had spoken a single word to anyone. Since the stormy night her small house's front door swung open, bringing with it devastating news that shattered her entire world. Her father, Police Officer Mike Dawson, would not be coming home again. Every day since had felt unbearably endless to Emma. The world around her had suddenly become too vast, strange, and heartbreaking to comprehend. She had retreated deeply into her protective shell of silence, a place no one, not even her mother Sarah Dawson or stepfather Daniel Everett, had been able to reach. Memories of that fateful night still haunted Emma every day. It had been a storm-filled evening. Emma sat curled up on the sofa, anxiously watching her mother pace restlessly by the window, phone pressed tight to her ear, her face pale with worry. Her father, Officer Mike Dawson, hadn't returned from his rescue mission at sea. When a heavy knock sounded at the door amidst thunder crashes, Emma's heart constricted painfully. Two officers stood drenched in the downpour, their eyes filled with deep sadness and sympathy. Her world collapsed entirely the moment those choked words reached her ears. "We're deeply sorry. Mike gave his life rescuing others." From that instant, life inside their small house seemed to halt. Sarah Dawson, once a cheerful, lively woman, suddenly became fragile and distant. The silent tears her mother tried so hard to hide always pierced Emma's heart deeply. Not long after, Daniel Everett entered their lives. He was the new teacher at Harbor Cove Elementary School, a quiet, kind-hearted man who genuinely tried everything possible to unite their small family. Yet, no matter how hard Daniel tried, the distance between him and Emma remained painfully wide. Conversations between Daniel and Emma were strained, awkward sentences. Daniel never knew exactly how to comfort the hurting little girl. Each attempt he made to grow closer only resulted in Emma silently withdrawing even further. Inside Emma lingered an unspoken feeling of guilt, that opening her heart to Daniel somehow meant betraying her father's memory. Each night, when the house fell quiet, Emma would silently slip over the small fence behind their house, following the grassy path to the back door of the police station. There, behind the wooden gate, Max always waited patiently, as if he could sense the sorrow deep inside her heart. Emma whispered her deepest secrets to the dog, feelings of loneliness, persistent nightmares, or just words she wished she'd had the chance to share with her dad. Max never answered, but he always stayed, silently listening, his warm eyes gently soothing the wounds in Emma's heart. Only when she was with Max did Emma feel a sense of peace, as though her father was still close by. Emma stood outside the bustling town hall, her small heart pounding rapidly inside her chest. Her hands firmly gripped the glass jar filled with carefully saved coins, gathered quietly over nearly a year. They were loose change her father used to hand her after trips, birthday gift coins, or tiny earnings from last summer's lemonade stand outside her front yard. All of it totaled merely $48.30, yet, to Emma, it was a precious treasure. Before she had left home, Emma's mother, Sarah, knelt beside her, worry etched across her gentle face. "Honey, you don't have to do this. It might be very hard, and I'm afraid it might make you even sadder." Emma's clear blue eyes looked back at her mother. She didn't speak, but the quiet determination reflected in her gaze answered everything. Daniel stood quietly behind Sarah, offering a faint smile of encouragement, though he knew nothing he could say would sway the firmness in Emma's young eyes. "She's already made up her mind," he gently told Sarah. "We need to let her try." Now, as Emma drew a deep breath, her footsteps felt weighted, as if burdened by 1,000 doubts. Inside, the town hall was even more crowded than she'd anticipated, filled with animated voices, hearty laughs, and adults bidding energetically. At the center of all attention, Emma immediately recognized Max. Max sat calmly on stage, ears perked attentively, eyes carefully scanning the bustling crowd. His thick fur had begun to gray around his muzzle, yet he still exuded the same calm, trustworthy presence she remembered. Seeing him there, Emma recalled all those patient evenings when Max had sat quietly by the back gate, listening intently to her whispered secrets she couldn't share with anyone else. Ladies and gentlemen, today, everyone has a chance to own a piece of Harbor Cove history. Max, 5 years of service, retired after Officer Mike Dawson passed away. He's looking for a new home. Come on, let's show Max some love, the auctioneer announced loudly, abruptly pulling Emma back to the present moment. Bidding starts at $400. Hearing that number, Emma's heart seemed to pause. The glass jar in her small, trembling hand suddenly felt impossibly fragile and insignificant. Her $48.30 appeared almost worthless now. For a brief second, she considered retreating, but just then, her eyes met Max's warm, compassionate gaze, instantly reigniting the flame of courage deep within her heart. Emma recalled the comforting words her father used to say whenever she felt afraid. Being brave isn't about not feeling scared, sweetheart. It's about feeling afraid, yet choosing to step forward because of what matters most to you. Amidst the buzzing excitement, Emma tightened her grip on her jar, and with newfound determination, her small feet moved forward decisively, heading directly toward the stage where Max patiently awaited. Each small step Emma took towards the stage felt as if the entire world was focusing solely on her. Every gaze upon her made her heart tremble. The hall fell silent for a brief moment, quickly erupting into excitement again as bids started to echo rapidly across the room. "I bid $450, a deep, confident voice sounded from the left side. Emma glanced quickly and recognized Tom Grayson, Harbor Cove's wealthiest, most influential man. His expression was cold, his sharp eyes carrying an enigmatic half-smile. Everyone knew Grayson was swiftly acquiring every piece of land in town, and Emma always felt an unsettling chill whenever she saw him. $500? Another strong voice called from the other side. Emma saw Oliver Bennett, the elderly fisherman respected by the entire town. His face was weathered by years at sea, eyes shadowed by unspoken grief. His granddaughter, who had been investigating Grayson's company's illegal waste disposal, had died mysteriously 2 years ago. Emma had overheard adults whisper about that tragedy, understanding Oliver had profound reasons for bidding here. The excitement intensified as bids climbed higher, yet to Emma these sounds grew increasingly distant. Her hands trembled, her heart raced, but she persisted forward, gripping her coin jar as if it were her entire world. $600, Grayson declared coolly, his voice confident. Oliver Bennett hesitated briefly, then firmly countered, $750. Emma stepped closer, holding her breath as she bravely raised the jar above her head. Her tiny voice rang clearly amidst the crowd. "I want to bid." Instantly, the entire hall fell silent. Hundreds of eyes fixed upon the small girl. The auctioneer leaned down, smiling gently and kindly at Emma. "Sweetheart, what is your bid?" Emma took a deep breath, her clear blue eyes shimmering as she met his gaze bravely. $48.30. Whispers rippled briefly through the audience. Someone chuckled quietly, but swiftly fell silent when confronted by Oliver Bennett's stern glare. Tom Grayson's eyes reflected disdain, but Emma didn't care. Her focus stayed locked on Max. The dog's eyes met hers calmly, with unwavering steadiness, as if silently saying, "Be brave, little one." The auctioneer knelt closer, his voice gentle and compassionate. "I'm very sorry, my dear, but that amount just isn't enough." Max let out a low, aching whine. The sound echoed beneath the rafters, tugging at the deepest corners of every heart in the room. Emma wanted to scream, to run, but Max barked, loud, sharp, certain. The entire room fell silent. And in that moment, Emma understood. She wasn't just bidding for Max. She was trying to hold on to the last living piece of her dad. the only part she could still touch, the only place she could send all the words left unsaid. Outside, the sun still shone and the fair buzzed with life. But inside, it was just one little girl, a jar of coins, and the steady gaze of an old dog, waiting to be allowed to belong to each other. Max was not just any German shepherd. Even in stillness, his presence filled the entire warehouse. He was massive, broad-shouldered, with a dark saddle of fur running down his back, fading into golden tan around his face. His ears stood tall, never drooping like those of other aging dogs. His eyes, deep brown like liquid earth, gleamed with the kind of intelligence born only from having seen everything and choosing silence. The people of Harbor Cove still remembered the stories of Max and Officer Mike Dawson. At the local diner, tales were still told of how the two could clear out a whole block with a single command. There was that time Max tracked a missing child during a snowstorm. He never left Mike's side, not even when lured with his favorite food. He once charged into a burning barn, chased suspects through the woods, and always stood between danger and his partner, with a loyalty most humans could only dream of. But there was one story no one liked to mention, the one Emma kept seeing in her dreams. It was the day of Mike Dawson's funeral. That morning, rain poured down in sheets, turning the cemetery into a field of mud. The flag-draped casket lay beside an open grave. Officers stood at attention, their faces unreadable. Max sat beside the coffin. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. When the pastor spoke the final words, Max rested his head on the flag and refused to move. When someone tried to pull him away, he braced his legs and growled, a strangled, broken sound that made every adult present break into tears. In the end, they let him stay, until the last clump of earth was laid over. After that, Max returned home, walking silently behind Emma and Sarah as if the light inside him had been switched off. For weeks, he lay in the backyard, nose buried in Mike's old coat. Neighbors said he was grieving. Emma understood it better than anyone. He was waiting for a voice he would never hear again. From that day on, Emma only found her own voice in the dead of night, long after midnight. She would sneak behind the police station to the fence where Max was kept, because no one knew what else to do with him. She would sit in the grass, knees tucked under her chin, and whisper into the darkness, "It still hurts. I miss Dad too. I wish he could come home." Max would always perk up his ears, inch closer, and press his cold nose into her open palm. That was the only moment Emma felt whole. In the dark, she could pretend her father's absence wasn't permanent, just something that could still be fixed, if she could only find the right words. But today, at the auction, everything felt wrong. Max was chained inside a steel cage, looking smaller than usual, as if the world had made him shrink. The light was too bright, the people too loud. Even the officers hung their heads, ashamed. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Next bid, do I hear $750?" Tom Grayson raised a hand. "2,000, he said flatly, like he was buying a used car. People started murmuring. Everyone knew Tom. His face plastered on local ads, flashing a smile for home security systems and community trust. He wore a gold watch, gleaming teeth, and gave handshakes no one believed. 2,500, said Oliver Bennett, his voice like a hiss through clenched teeth, as if spending the money caused him physical pain. Someone whispered, "Old man Bennett doesn't even like dogs." But Bennett didn't care. His eyes never left Max, as if he saw something no one else could. Emma forced herself to stand between Sarah and Daniel, her fists clenched tightly at her sides. Sarah tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and whispered, "It's not fair. You should be the one keeping Max." Daniel tried to lighten the tension with a joke. "Hey, maybe Max will just follow whoever wins the bid, huh?" But Emma shot him a glare. Daniel fell silent, his words drying up immediately. At that moment, an unexpected image surged through Emma's mind, a memory returning like an uninvited short film. She saw her mom and Max playing in the yard. Mike tossed the ball, and Max leapt into the air, catching it mid-flight. tail wagging wildly. "I swear this dog's smarter than half the department," Mike once laughed, "and twice as brave." Sometimes he would sit beside Emma, wrap an arm around her shoulders, and whisper, "Promise me something, okay? If someday I'm not around, take care of Max. He's your family too." Emma had never imagined she'd have to keep that promise so soon. Back at the auction, the bidding climbed higher. Tom Grayson leaned back in his chair, smirking. "3,000, he said slowly, his voice oozing with confidence, drawing a ripple of murmurs from the crowd. Oliver Bennett didn't flinch. 3,500, he countered, his jaw set like stone. A young officer leaned in to whisper something to the auctioneer, but the man only nodded slightly and raised the price again. It was clear now, this wasn't just a routine auction for a retired canine. It had become something heavier, tangled in old secrets, unpaid debts. Emma never looked away from Max, and Max never looked at the bidders. His eyes stayed fixed on the little girl, his body tense, waiting for a command. Emma wanted to speak, to finally shatter the silence that had held her for so many months. But fear still clutched her throat, tight and unrelenting. As the hall still lingered in stunned silence, Max suddenly stepped forward, his leash snapping taut. The officer standing beside him tried to hold him back, but Max determinedly moved ahead, as if compelled by an invisible force urging him toward the small girl. He halted at the edge of the stage, eyes bright, warm, and fixed unwaveringly on Emma. Emma looked up at Max, her heart quivering fiercely within her chest. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks, yet these were no longer tears of sadness. They had transformed into tears of hope and gratitude. She felt with perfect clarity the message Max was silently conveying. "You are not alone. We'll get through this together." "Max," Emma whispered softly, her voice so faint it was almost inaudible, but it resonated deeply in both their hearts. Immediately, Max tugged sharply, slipping the leash free from the officer's grip. With purposeful determination, he bounded off the stage, racing directly toward Emma. The astonished crowd parted quickly, creating a clear path. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared interrupt the sacred beauty of this singular moment. When he reached Emma, Max slowed his pace, gazing directly into her eyes with profound affection. Emma sank to her knees, her small arms opening instinctively. Max gently stepped forward and rested his head against her chest, silently declaring he had chosen her as his true companion. Everyone around watched quietly, deeply moved by the genuine and innocent scene unfolding before them. Oliver Bennett quietly removed his hat, discreetly wiping moisture from his eyes. The auctioneer approached softly, regarding Emma with tenderness and heartfelt compassion, saying quietly, "It seems Max has made his own choice, and clearly, we all see it." Tom Grayson scowled, intending to voice his protest, but recognizing the collective unity and profound emotion in the room, he reluctantly remained silent. Sarah hurriedly approached Emma, gently placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Tears glistened on Sarah's face, illuminated by pure joy. Daniel moved closer, his eyes gentle and thoughtful, finally grasping the profound significance of the bond between Max and Emma. Emma raised her eyes to Max, her gaze shimmering with tears, her lips trembling slightly, but this time not from fear. Rather, an overwhelming surge of emotion welled powerfully inside her heart. "Thank you, Max, for choosing me." Emma's quiet words gently broke through her long-held silence, acting as a soft ray of light that dispersed the lingering darkness of loss and grief. And in that single whisper, a piece of her father's spirit felt alive again. In that moment, Emma found not only her lost voice, but also a newfound sense of life, born from the unconditional love and unwavering loyalty of a special dog named Max. The atmosphere inside the town hall grew profoundly heavy as Max gently rested his head against Emma. Everyone remained silent, captivated by the beautiful, emotional scene unfolding before their eyes. Max's gaze pierced the crowd, his look a combination of pleading and determination, clearly expressing his heartfelt choice. In the profound quietness, Oliver Bennett slowly stepped forward, his gentle voice resonating throughout the hall. Folks, please take a close look at the scene before us. Max has undoubtedly chosen little Emma. Isn't the purpose of this auction to find Max the best home possible? Clearly, the place Max truly wants to belong is by Emma's side, and I believe deep down every heart here knows it too. Oliver looked around the audience, his eyes sincere and emotional, as he softly continued. We all know Emma has lost the most precious thing in her life. Please, let's not take another precious thing away from her. Allow Max to stay with Emma. That is simply the right and fair thing to do. The hall was silent, deeply moved by Oliver's heartfelt words. But suddenly, Tom Grayson stood up abruptly, his face cold and voice harshly objecting. We must follow the rules. This is an auction, not an emotional game. The highest bidder takes the dog, plain and simple. Grayson's words made the crowd uneasy. Murmurs began to ripple through the audience. At that very moment, Max lifted his head and looked directly at Grayson, his eyes taking on a pleading expression. He took a tentative step toward the crowd, letting out a soft, desperate whine, as if begging them to reconsider. His action melted the hearts of everyone watching, all eyes focused intently on Emma and Max. Oliver once again raised his voice, firmly suggesting, "If anyone still doubts, I propose we hold an open vote, right here, right now. Let the collective voice decide." The auctioneer looked around thoughtfully, quickly sensing the general mood, and immediately agreed. All in favor of letting Emma Dawson keep Max, please raise your hands. Initially, only a few hesitant hands went up, but then quickly, hands began to rise confidently across the hall. Soon, nearly everyone present expressed unanimous support. Emma raised her eyes toward the crowd, her heart swelling with overwhelming emotion. She bent down and hugged Max tightly. Max pressed his head affectionately into Emma's chest, tail wagging joyously, his eyes glowing brightly with pure happiness as he realized he would forever belong to her. Sarah smiled softly, wiping away her tears. Daniel placed his hand warmly on Emma's shoulder, deeply touched. Oliver quietly stood aside, a gentle smile gracing the elderly fisherman's lips, his eyes shining with renewed hope and faith. In the crowded hall that day, they hadn't merely auctioned off a dog. They had offered love, compassion, and newfound hope to a little girl who had already lost so much. The hall slowly emptied, leaving behind warm handshakes, gentle words of encouragement, and tender glances directed at Emma and Max. Sarah held her daughter's small hand, while Daniel stood close by, his eyes reflecting pride and relief at finally understanding what truly mattered. As people prepared to leave, Oliver Bennett remained still, quietly watching Emma and Max together. His thoughtful gaze hinted he was weighing something deeply important. When Sarah turned to bid him goodnight, Oliver placed his rough hand on Daniel's shoulder and spoke firmly, his voice low but resolute. "We need to talk tonight. This isn't over yet." Sarah looked slightly worried, but seeing the gravity in Oliver's aging eyes, she nodded. That evening, inside the Dawson family's modest kitchen, warm golden light cast a comforting glow over the hush that filled the room, broken only by Max's steady breathing at Emma's side. Oliver brought an old wooden box, placing it carefully in the middle of the table. He pulled out a chair opposite Sarah, Daniel, and Emma. His calloused hand trembled slightly as he lifted the lid. Inside lay a weathered, leather-bound journal, a bundle of faded photographs, and 3 small sealed glass vials containing a clear liquid. He cleared his throat, looking at Emma for a long moment before speaking in a quiet, grave tone. "Before Mia, my granddaughter, disappeared, she risked everything to gather these. It's all tied to Grayson Developments, that same man you all saw shouting today. Mia discovered they've been dumping toxic waste into Harbor Cove's waters for years." Sarah let out a sharp, shaky breath, instinctively gripping Emma's hand tighter. Oliver pressed on, voice catching slightly when he spoke his granddaughter's name. Mia believed Mike Dawson, Emma's father, knew too. Mike trained Max specifically to detect traces of those chemicals. Max isn't just any dog. He holds memories, scents, and the secrets of where evidence was hidden. Mike left clues behind, but he died before he could reveal everything. He gently pushed the journal and vials toward Daniel. You all need to understand, Grayson doesn't want Max because he's a loyal dog. He wants him because Max is living proof. These chemical samples, along with Mia's notes, could finally expose Grayson's crimes. Daniel stared hard at the journal. Sarah whispered, her voice trembling, "We can't hide this any longer, Oliver." Emma remained silent, her hand gently stroking Max's fur, feeling the calm, steady warmth of her loyal companion. She understood now Max was more than just a friend. He was her father's last hope to protect what he'd fought so hard for. Oliver drew in a deep breath. Tomorrow, at the town council meeting, we go public. Grayson and everyone protecting him will have nowhere left to hide. Daniel gripped Sarah's hand tightly, his eyes no longer hesitant. We won't let him silence us ever again. Emma looked at Max, whispering softly, "We'll do it, won't we, Max?" Max let out a soft, reassuring whine, nudging his nose into Emma's palm, his eyes gleaming with unwavering trust. In that quiet kitchen moment, a family and their brave dog stood ready to step into the light, armed with the truth that had cost them so much. Morning in Harbor Cove dawned under a gloomy, misty sky, the chill clinging to the Dawson family's small windows. In the kitchen, Sarah quietly brewed coffee while Daniel stood by the window, eyes locked on the road outside. Emma sat beside Max, arms wrapped tightly around his neck, as if letting go even for a moment would strip her of her safest shelter. Oliver Bennett entered, his old coat damp with sea mist. He laid a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder, his voice low but unwavering. "We need to be ready. Grayson won't just sit and watch. He knows we have the truth now." Daniel nodded, his clenched fists betraying the anger burning steadily within. He turned to Emma, his gaze softening, then bent down to stroke Max's head. "Max, thanks to you we have this chance. Protect Emma like you always have." Max let out a soft whine, licking Daniel's hand as if promising without words. Suddenly, the crunch of tires on gravel cut through the tense quiet. Sarah flinched, rushing to the window. A sleek black car, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside, stopped abruptly at the front gate. Two men in dark suits stepped out, faces as hard as stone. Oliver's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with a wary spark. Grayson's men. Daniel motioned for Sarah to pull Emma and Max further back inside the house. He stepped out onto the porch, blocking the doorway, his face calm but eyes sharp as steel. A tall man in dark glasses approached Daniel, voice lowered but thick with threat. "Mr. Grayson wants the dog and whatever else you're hiding, now. Or else." He let the warning hang, his cold gaze flicking toward the window, where Emma clutched Max tighter than ever. Daniel drew a deep breath, lifting his chin, each word falling firm and clear. "No, we're not afraid of him anymore. You can't silence my family again." Inside, Sarah pulled Emma close, whispering firmly, "I'm right here. Max is right here. No one will ever take him from you again." Outside, the air coiled tight as a drawn bow. Oliver stepped beside Daniel, his voice strong like waves crashing against stubborn rock. "Grayson has stolen too much already. He won't steal one more thing today." The man in dark glasses glared hard but finally motioned his partner to back away. He hissed a final threat, voice dripping with menace. "You'll regret this." The black car roared back, reversing quickly down the drive, leaving a trail of dust in its wake. In the tense silence that followed, Daniel laid a steady hand on Oliver's shoulder, his voice ringing like iron. "We'll tell everything at the council. No one will stop the truth this time." Emma buried her face against Max's back, whispering into his warm fur, her breath trembling yet fierce. "We're not afraid, Max. We're going to win." Max wagged his tail, eyes gleaming with unshakable trust, ready to stand by her side until the very end. That afternoon, inside Harbor Cove's modest town hall, tension hummed in the air like a live wire. Word of the urgent meeting had spread quickly, and curious townsfolk filled every seat. All eyes were fixed on the Dawson family, Oliver Bennett, and, most of all, Max, who sat firmly beside Emma like a living witness. Sarah squeezed Emma's hand tightly as the family entered. Daniel carried the wooden box containing the old journal, faded photos, and the sealed vials Oliver had entrusted to them. Oliver walked with quiet resolve, clutching his worn cap like a flag of unwavering truth. Councilman Harris banged his gavel to open the meeting. Today we gather to hear the petition brought forth by the Dawson family and Mr. Oliver Bennett concerning serious allegations against Grayson Developments. In the front row, Tom Grayson sat with arms crossed, a cold smirk flickering at Emma and Max. Beside him, two lawyers shuffled neatly stacked papers, looking confident that they'd shut this down quickly. Sarah rose first. She drew a deep breath, her voice trembling but ringing clear with bravery. "My husband, Mike Dawson, died for this truth. I refuse to let his sacrifice be forgotten. This," she gestured to the journal Oliver placed before the council, "is evidence that he and Mia Bennett collected for months. Max, Mike's police dog, was specially trained to detect the toxic chemicals Grayson Developments secretly dumped into our harbor." Whispers rippled through the audience. Grayson struggled to maintain a cold smile, but his clenched fists betrayed him. Oliver stepped up beside Sarah, his voice iron strong. "My granddaughter died for this truth, and I'll die for it too, if I must. But before that happens, everyone here will know." Daniel laid out the vials and photographs, pushing them toward the council table. A town lab technician immediately began inspecting the vials, while Harris flipped through the weathered pages of the journal, brows furrowed at the meticulous notes. Dates, locations, even license plates of trucks hauling waste. Emma sat perfectly still, hands resting on Max's fur. She felt his steady breath and every subtle shift of his sturdy body, like her father's spirit right beside her, bolstering her courage. A council member spoke up, voice tinged with shock. "Mr. Grayson, do you have a response?" Grayson rose, voice icy, about to speak, but Max suddenly stood, stepping forward deliberately. He sniffed each chemical vial, then barked once, loud and resolute, eyes locked on Grayson with a look sharp as a blade. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath. In that moment, no more words were needed. Truth had spoken through loyalty itself. A burst of applause erupted. Someone shouted, "Justice for Mike Dawson and Mia Bennett." Councilman Harris banged his gavel again, voice firm and decisive. "We will forward this evidence immediately to state police and environmental investigators. Max is hereby recognized as Emma Dawson's therapy dog. No one has the authority to separate them." Sarah hugged Emma tightly, tears of relief spilling freely. Daniel gripped Oliver's hand hard in gratitude, while Max stood proud before the crowd, tail wagging gently as if he knew he had just fulfilled his highest purpose, protecting his girl and bringing justice back home. After the tense, tearful council meeting, Harbor Cove seemed washed clean by a gentle afternoon rain. Under the overhang of the town hall, Emma crouched beside Max, her small hand buried in his thick fur, soaking in the warmth and calm only Max could give. Behind her, Sarah watched her daughter with eyes full of quiet love, while Daniel moved about, shaking hands and thanking every neighbor who had stood by them. Oliver Bennett sat leaning back against the old brick wall, his battered hat pulled low, yet the peace in his eyes was plain for all to see. Emma whispered into Max's ear, "We did it, Max. Dad would be so proud of us, wouldn't he?" Max let out a soft whine, wagging his tail, then nudged Emma's cheek with a gentle lick, his way of answering without words. In that moment, Emma felt more than ever that she was no longer alone. She had her mother, Daniel, Oliver, and most importantly, she had Max, her bravest and truest friend. Sarah knelt down, hugging Emma from behind, her voice trembling but filled with warmth. "I'm so proud of you, Emma. You're braver than anyone I've ever known." Daniel stepped closer, resting his hand on Emma's shoulder with a gentle smile. "Your mom's right, and your dad is proud too." Raindrops tapped softly on the roof above them, carrying the fresh scent of earth and the salty breath of Harbor Cove's sea breeze. Emma looked up at the sky, her blue eyes shimmering with hope. She knew grief wouldn't vanish overnight, but her voice, the one she'd hidden away for so long, had returned, stronger and full of trust. Emma murmured, her small voice echoing like a promise to herself, to Max, and to the father she still missed so much. I'll keep living. I'll speak. I'll laugh. And I'll protect what Dad believed in. Max barked softly, adding his own courage to hers, then settled down beside Emma, his eyes bright beneath the drizzling, hopeful rain. A week after the historic council meeting, Harbor Cove seemed to wear a fresh, hopeful face. News of Grayson Development's scandal spread through every street, and investigators from the big city were now working tirelessly. Townsfolk whispered to one another about Max and Emma, a living testament to courage and unwavering faith. The Dawson house no longer felt cloaked in silence. Each morning, Sarah laughed more, her eyes sparkling with a hope Emma hadn't seen since her father was alive. Daniel spent hours on the porch fixing the old fence, pausing now and then to smile warmly at Emma and Max, playing freely in the yard. Emma no longer snuck out at night to the police station. Now, Max was by her side day and night. Every afternoon, they ran down the path lined with wild daisies behind their home. Emma's giggles mingled with Max's happy barks, and neighbors often paused to smile at the sight. Oliver Bennett visited often. He would sit with Sarah and Daniel at the kitchen table, planning to release every bit of evidence to the press so no truth could ever be buried again. Sometimes he'd wave Emma and Max over, patting Max's head and saying, as if sealing a promise, "This good dog kept your father's trust safe, Emma. Now it's your turn to keep it safe for Max." Emma would just grin, nodding firmly. In her small heart, fear no longer held power, only warmth and quiet strength remained. Each night before bed, Emma would whisper to Max all the words she never got to tell her father. And as always, Max listened silently, his eyes gently closing, his steady breath like the heartbeat Emma could lean on forever. In her new dreams, Emma no longer saw her father disappearing into the storm. Instead, she and Max ran along the beach, and far ahead, her father stood smiling softly, waiting. Whatever hardships lay ahead, Emma knew she was ready, because by her side was Max, her faithful guardian of courage and hope.